We feel like the governors don't appreciate the work that the Senate does. If you hear some of the pronouncements from your colleagues directed at members of this House, it is as if they don't understand the work that we do. We have fought, and on principle, we have agreed with the National Assembly on 3 things. That number one, counties will never receive less than what they received in the previous or preceding financial year. Number two, that if there is a shortfall in revenue, the person or the entity to bear that is the national government. And thirdly, that Governor, year on year, Senate has always to demonstrate, the national government has always to demonstrate increase in the resources that the county governments receive. So whereas you're telling us that the COG is not happy with the 387, I would be more happy, Governor, if you were saying that we saved you 7 billion Kenya shillings that was going to be removed from the allocation to county governments. Because as you know, you are a Senate. A mediation process does not get you entirely what you wanted. And I was getting a bit concerned because your colleagues were threatening to shut down counties, including some from my own political party, and I didn't understand why they were crying like that instead of allowing the Senate to conclude that process. So in terms of fighting for counties, I think this Senate has done very well, but we don't see reciprocity in terms of just basic respect from members, not you personally, but from some of the members of the COG. And I know you had ambitions to be chair of COG. I don't know how the campaigns went, but you need to be able to pass a message to your colleagues that some of the pronouncements really demoralize the Senate in our work.
You see, if we debate this matter, we can take the entire day because they are pertinent and there are issues that are of great concern. But we've got a brief before us today that we must do justice to. But just linking the brief before us to this conversation so that we go back to the numbers, is that these reports that we've directed the Auditor General to do a deep analysis on is part of the financing mechanisms for Nairobi City County. For the financial year ended 30th June 2023, you had reported a collection of 10.5 billion. 10.5 billion Kenya shillings as per the report of the receiver of revenue. Now 10.5 billion means that on average you're collecting 29 million per day. 29 million per day. Every single hour you're collecting 1.2 million. So the 1 hour that we have spent here, Nairobi has collected about 1.2 million and about 20,000 per minute. Of course, there are many Kenyans who believe that these numbers with automation, with greater efficiencies, that Nairobi should collect much more than the 10.5 billion that is here. You are complaining about the division of revenue, which we all share, that the 387 billion is not sufficient to support even the basic operations of counties when you think about the non-discretionary expenditure that has been loaded to county governments. I think it would not be fair for us to proceed without querying your plans and strategies for financing of Nairobi City County. Because this 10.5 billion plus your share of the 387 billion is not going to transform Nairobi into the modern metropolis that it ought to be. So outside whatever you're collecting from Gikomba, and outside whatever the national government gives county governments thinking that it's a favor, and yet it's a constitutional right, what are the other options for financing of Nairobi City County that you have in place right now? I know you've told us about green bonds, but those are futuristic. What is it that you're doing over and above the 10.5 billion and whatever it is the Senate is going to allocate to Nairobi?
Thank you, Chair. Kindly allow me just 1 minute to, because I'm very passionate about devolution. We've been together in this house, and even previously when I was in the lower house, we were together in a committee which I chaired, and I must say I am continuously astounded by your growing wisdom, and how you manage these issues. You're doing very well, which is true, because for the first 5 years I chaired. and I think you learned, and you're very good.
Order, Governor.
It's a compliment.
It is a general rule that when a governor praises a senator, then there's a problem.
No.
So I might want to ask you to withdraw your flowery comment.
I will withdraw the praise. Chair, on DORA, if you look at 217B and PFM, I think 191.3A, a very dangerous precedent has been set, where CARA is being used to amend DORA. If you look at that, the memorandum that came, it is challengeable. And 219 says specifically that when there's a shortfall, it must be borne by the national government. So we are grateful, and I will talk to my colleagues, because it is not right to disparage the Senate in its efforts. I believe the Senate has done a great job in pushing for us. Of course, in this mediation, maybe the approach could have been different, but that is crying over spilt milk. Because if the 30 days lapsed without an agreement, then we would go back to 400 billion. It was not for us to have an agreement. It was for those pushing an amendment to have an agreement. We would have stuck at 400. But we understand the macroeconomic issues, and I believe we'll grow. The point you've raised is very important, as I now move to what you've asked. Devolution, and I will also table to you a publication I did in 2010 with the International Commission of Jurists on the fiscal and operational framework for fiscal decentralization. The operational and legal framework for it. There are 4 principles, but we only focus on one as counties, and sometimes even as Senate. The first one, of course, devolution is based on the principle of subsidiarity. That a service is best offered at the lowest level compatible with the benefit of that service. The first thing you look at is what are the constitutional responsibilities of each level. So that is the expenditure responsibility. That is in the 4th schedule, and that is costing of functions. The second principle you then look at